Hello, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, I just wanted to do a quick introduction to the interview that I just recently did with David Rodriguez. David is an incredible friend and man, one hell of a man. And he was on a very tight schedule, so we squeezed it in and we started pretty quickly. So just to properly introduce David, I wanted to say number one, he is a tireless advocate for self-directed education and learning. He was just recently in China with Dana Martin advocating for unschooling, if that gives you any indication of his dedication. But some important things to take note in this conversation. Number one, his description of his love and passion for Anarchapulco and the experiences that he's had in the past and is looking forward to in the future. Number two, his work with John Taylor Gatto, who is certainly one of my heroes. And if you don't know who that is, definitely check it out. And third, he mentions drawing out the inner genius of each person, each child, as the true education. And in my opinion, this should be a gauge for the effectiveness of a community or a society, and a very good reason why, as we develop our community, we should be very aware of this metric. And so, with that said, here's the interview.
All right, hello everybody, and thanks for dropping in on us today. We've got a very special guest for our Anarchapulco 24/7, 365 community interview. It's the one, the only David Rodriguez. David, there's very few people that are more excited about Anarchapulco each year than me, and you've got to be number one on the list. So I
Thanks,
guess.
man. I love it, dude. Seriously, it's an honor.
Yeah, I mean, we both. I met you the first Anarchapulco. We were one of the first and the few, but you've been, your heart is in it. You just love it, and we can see that. It's pretty clear. Where did that come from? Where's this dedication, this passion come from? Right off the
You know what,
bat.
man? Yeah, no, man. I was raised in a small town and played a bunch of sports growing up, and just liked the camaraderie. And then got into college and kind of searching for a life path. And then my buddy showed me the 9/11 documentary, Loose Change, I think, in college, and I was like, that's kind of strange. And I saw the Freedom of Fascism documentary later on after college. I said, is this the world we live in, right? Where like governments do this to people and they lie to us. And so little by little, I'm like, okay, maybe I should pay attention to politics. And then I think it was 2007, when I saw Ron Paul on the stage and he said, I'm championing the Constitution. And, champion is a word that I love. And I was doing some personal growth at that point and still am. And I said, okay, well, I got to learn about this Constitution and this guy. And I think war's bad. And he talked about the Fed and all these things. And then once the election, he had all these awards, these great fundraising days in 2008. And I'm like, maybe he'll win. No, he didn't. And then he ran in 2012. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to win. And then I saw that, charade. And I said, is there a bit different way? And somebody had mentioned Murray Rothbard to me before. And I had listened to the audiobook For New Liberty. Very helpful in how a stateless society would run. It made a lot of sense to me. I have a business degree, but I didn't hear about this stuff in business college. And I did actually have one professor who I didn't know he was an anarchist. I didn't say that. His name was Edward Stringham. A lot of respect for him. And like 10 years later, I'm like, oh, he was an anarchist. He's an ANCAP. And so anyways, he did an economic class that was helpful, but it was like, 3 months, 3 days a week. And so there's not really a huge impact there with everything. So anyways, I want to be free. And this is something I didn't realize, is that I was raised by loving parents, but they were very strict on me. And so once I learned about the principles of self-ownership, personal responsibility, and, accepting the consequences for my actions, positive or negative, I said, this seems like the future. So when Jeff Burrick made the announcement to Anarchapulco I think it must have been July or August of 2014, he said, well, we're going to do this event. I probably was one of the first guys to buy a ticket. I said, I got to get down there because, I was doing business and learning, like, you meet people at events, go meet people, have a beer with somebody, or go break bread with people. And so that's what I did. And I came down there and I was just like so excited. And I took the workshop with Dana Martin. I took the workshop with Luke Radowski and Dan Dix and James Corbett. And I was just like, these guys are fucking awesome, you know? And they are, you know? So that's why I keep coming back. And actually I video recorded like Joby Weeks and Anna Pashanta. And this is the first time I heard about Ross Ulbrook. You know, I video recorded that panel. I said, oh my gosh, dude, they really did this guy dirty, you know? And so little by little, you know, and understanding that you and the people in the community, like you guys, we are the visionaries of humanity. And that's not something like egoistic. It's like, we have to go beyond the state, you know, and of course you see the evolve sign in the background, but it is like the word, we have to evolve, you know, we're not meant to be in the cog of a machine and to be siphoned. And they take, this is a crazy thing, and I'll give it back to you in a second, but like the income tax and all these other taxes, they take like a third or maybe, 33%, 40% of our life, maybe 50% with all these taxes. So conservatively call it a third. That's 15 years of our working life if you do it by, let's say, 4 months out of the year. So these guys are taking our life force, and it's just not acceptable. And I'm not going to look into my kids' eyes or my grandkids' eyes and say, hey, I saw this tyranny going on, and I just didn't want to do it because I feared for my life, or, you know, it was unpopular or whatever. And, you know, I have this conversation with some of my loving family members and they don't like it, but what am I going to do? You know, if this is the truth, you know, and I'm not right all the time, I make mistakes, I make errors, but if I'm searching for truth and I find something and I show it to somebody else and he said, no, I'm not interested, then what am I going to do? So anyways, I know that these types of events take a lot of effort, you know, seeing from the first year at the Copacabana and then the Grand Hotel, the Convention Center. And so it is a mess, you know, trying to organize these things. And I was running my own conference, my Education Options Expo, for 3 years. And, you know, ultimately it's like one guy who does it. You might have a few volunteers who help out, but then, you know, there's work involved, there's contacting, there's, you know, presentations, preparations, and things that nobody knows unless you hold an event. Because if you're just a regular attendee, and I mean, by the way, if you attend Anarchapulco, you're not a regular attendee, you're an important human being. But at some other conference, you know, you buy a ticket, you show up, and you're like, hey, you know, maybe my company paid for me to be here, or, you know, whatever. But if you come to Acapulco, you get a passport, you get a plane ticket, you get a hotel, you figure out the Airbnb. It's a big move, but it's so worth it. And every year I just get more hopeful, I get more optimistic. I learn a lot more, you know, I make new friends. Some of my best friends I learned in that first and second and third years. And so anyways, that's kind of the long story of, you know, why I care so much, because freedom is the deal. Freedom is the important thing. And I felt that growing up, but nobody told me because no one else knew. And so, you know, I feel part of my, you know, mission is to help people realize like freedom is the deal. And there's a quote by Thucydides. He said, the secret of happiness is freedom, and the secret of freedom is courage. And so that's why I respect anybody who's putting their work out there and exposing themselves, you know, intellectually and personally, because it is difficult to do that. But at some point, you know, we all just gotta, you know, put it all out there, and hopefully it makes an impact for other people, and, you know, positive relationships can be created, and, you know, we all can have a happy and bright future together.
Yeah, man, I tell you, that's the and you said a wealth of so many great things in that small little package there. You know, one of the subtitles of this interview series is essentially how voluntarism works. And what I'm trying to introduce and, you know, really highlight is that, you know, there's a lot of people that talk about and cry about all the things that are wrong, but this is the community that actually does something about it, not just gets in an airplane and comes to Acapulco, but, you know, they live it, and they're doing it every single day. And certainly you're a great example of that. You know, you're one of the guys that is absolutely living it every day. And so, you know, I think that's the thing that excites me the most, and why, like when you talk to your family and stuff like that, you know, they don't get to see all these people and stuff. They don't get to see the passion and the excitement and the, you know, the dedication that some of these people have gone through, and the hardships that they've gone through to be free. But
Right.
man, that energy is amazing, you know, and that's, I think that's one of the things for me. But, when you think about going to Anarchapulco, what is the one thing? Is there one thing primarily that really pulls you to want to come back and looking forward to it like it's Christmas, or what? What is the one thing for you?
Yeah, I would say definitely the people, so just seeing how the state keeps progressing. And one of the red pills for me was a United Nations Agenda 21 plan. And that's their plan to enslave everybody and basically control transportation, communications, the earth. Like, this is why you can't, repair the roof on your own house without a permit, or you can't collect rainwater, like all these different little like minor things are actually a sign of something large. And so I go to Anarchapulco every year because I want to make positive relationships. And I'm actually kind of looking to build it, and kind of figure out like, where am I going to plant my roots? I'm in the Bay Area in Northern California, and I love California's weather, but it's a behemoth of a state. They got terrible gun laws, and it's forced vaccines. We're the first state to do forced vaccines, and now I think there's 5 states that it's in legislation, like confirmed. Congressman signed it, like everything's official. So it's not a safe place to be, I think, long term. And so Anarchapulco is about the relationships for me to find new friends, have some beers with some buddies. I love that we're like right on the beach. This is going to be the 3rd year with the Princessa. I can literally walk out of my hotel room, out of the elevator, walk 2 minutes to the beach, soft sand. And I love swimming in the ocean. I love swimming in the pools. So it's a vacation. It's a networking thing. Maybe there'll be some pretty girls down there. I'm still a single man. And so trying to find good people to be with, because, I'm in my 30s and, kind of went through the first part of my life and just kind of meandering. But as I've done transformational work, conscious work, even some plant medicines, you find out, wow, life really is what we create. And so I have to become clear in my mind. I have to become a better human being, stronger, more kind with myself and with other people. And then I find that these kind of people are at Anarchapulco. So it's the humans, it's the ideas, and really the hope, because if somebody's watching, constant negative news known as CNN or ABC, Fox, or all these different things, it's all just negative and like mind control and corporate programming and PR baloney, buy your pharmaceutical drugs and buy all these things. And it's very depressing if you think that's real, So to find real communications, I go to Anarchapulco, find an awesome, independent media producer. Some of these are my friends now. And ultimately, I just want to give value to other people, right? Because I want to be around good, positive people and help out. And then, later on, people are like, man, you're very helpful. Let's get involved. Let's do something. You're like, yes, let's do something. And I think having a neighborhood, having a community is kind of the desired goal. And whether, I got some buddies that are going to the Free State, New Hampshire. Other people are in Arizona or Nevada or Utah, or some people, in Guadalajara, Acapulco, you're there. And other people like, where do you go? Costa Rica, Hawaii. So kind of this conversation, this is a difficult conversation of how to build that community, right? Yeah. So I'm learning about this, trying to create stuff. And it's a big move, So when you pick up your possessions and go move somewhere, that's a big decision. So how to do it in a positive way. And also the Bitcoin, there's financial stuff, you want to learn about these things. Bitcoin's around 10,000. I last looked. But, there's other blockchain technologies that are so exciting. And many of these blockchain founders of the companies, they're, voluntarists and anarcho-capitalists. And they have solutions through the blockchain. So, like voting or communications, or like the escrow type situation, So how to do that? I want to accelerate that and help push that forward. And then, I think the quote is, people don't learn from people that talk. You have to demonstrate it. So we have to find the solutions and we have to build it. And then this requires conversation, dialogue. And it's not something that happens overnight. People think it just happens. There's this overnight success. Well, overnight success takes 10 years. It takes 20 years, So what you see on TV is not real, right? There's actual hard work involved, mental effort. And so this event, in my opinion, is just about the people, the learning, the fun, the joy, and everything involved. It's a very holistic event. And you can come there to party. You can come there for business. You can come there for something in between. There's no cops you got to worry about. I feel safer in Acapulco than I do in San Jose, California, or in LA. And so that's a really important distinction too. So I feel safer down there than here. So I think I got to get out of California.
Yeah, well, I'm one that I came and I never left.
Right.
I absolutely love it, and I think Acapulco is, I've traveled all over the world, and obviously seen a lot of places, and for me, Acapulco and Anarchapulco is obviously the place for me, and so that's essentially why I started the group, the 24/7 365 group, because I want to live it every day. In fact, I want to live every day as much as I can. And that's what I get to do here. It's really a departure from what I'm sure most people experience in in what they'll call the real world. But this is much more like the real world. It is the cornucopia of like everything. You really do take on the responsibility for living down here. There is dangerous places and stuff like that, and so there is that, you got to be responsible for what you do down here, but at the same time you also get all the benefits for making your own decisions and doing the things the way you want to do them, which I think is a really exciting thing. And one of the things I would encourage people to do is stay longer, come early and stay after, and experience this, because there's just so much about Acapulco and Anarchapulco that is different. It takes a little bit of time to kind of soak in, to like let go of all these other things that you're supposed to think is important, and then you start to realize, holy cow, there's all these other things that are really important, and certainly freedom is one of those things.
Right.
But David, one of the other reasons that I definitely wanted to talk to you is one of the books, one of my favorite books is this book right here, which you're the editor of. And John Taylor Gatto is somebody that I look at as probably one of the most influential people in my life. I mean, he was a incredible man, and you really had a chance to meet him and work with him and stuff like that. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, working with him and working on this book. This book, by the way, is incredible, man. I can't get through it. I can probably get through one page, and I've got another great idea that I've got to write down. So it's just loaded with with inspirational, good information and stuff that is incredible, and certainly you're well versed with it. But let's talk a little bit about John Taylor Gatto and his influence on you.
Yeah. So I think I might have heard about him through Alex Jones some years ago, and then he kind of was in the back of my mind. And then I saw his 5-hour interview that Richard Grove did at tragedyandhope.com, and I was just like, I just, it was such a well done series. And then I was in the insurance business at that time, and I said, I got to meet this guy. Like, I can't just sit here, because it like you, it vibrates with the truth inside you, and you're like, what are these bells I have to get, ringing in my ear, get permission to go to the bathroom, or do these assignments, or do these tests? It's all a bunch of crap, man. It's all a way to make me become a weak person, and it's by design. And that's what was just so alarming. He was pulling out quotes from the early 1900s, 1906 or 1808 and 1850, 1890. You're like, these guys consciously created the system that I have to, I mean, there's a rage stage that I think about, and anger, I have to overcome that. So I forgive the people, but I don't forget what I experienced in my intuition at that time. So anyways, I had to reach out to John, I think it was in 2013, maybe 2014. And I said, hey, I'd like to get permission to use your name, because I think you should be well known, So I was going to a conference out there, the Alternative Education Resource Organization out there, which helps people start schools, voluntary type schools, really cool. And I said, hey, I'd love to come meet you, and da-da-da. And so they said, okay. And then I flew out there, and then he said, yeah, he signed this document for me. He said, by the way, his wife asked me, will you help, republish this book? And I said, okay. I had to think about it. And then I got back to him a couple weeks later because I hadn't published a book before, but that's what I signed up for. I want to help him get his name out there. And there's some other really interesting things that happened. But working with him, he had already had his stroke. So his body was half paralyzed at that point, bedridden. And so he could write with his hand, which was, really amazing. And he could type. I even got video of him typing, pecking and choosing typing. I mean, just a very
Wow.
persistent, strong-willed man. And we still have essays that we haven't published. These are going to go into second and third volumes. And just kind of working out. There's a project called the GATTO Project that hasn't officially launched. We're putting some stuff out there. The GATTO Project is a play on his name, which means get all the thinkers out of for school. So GATTO means get all them out of for school. And so he really liked that one. And so we're just working on some of the support features and services for that to make it perpetual. And I was so inspired by him, to see him on video, to see him in real life. And he is just the real deal, in terms of being an intelligent guy, loving guy. And in my experience, just such a dedicated person to children when he could have went off and made money doing advertising and business. He's a strong communicator verbally and written. But he was so intrigued by the school system and what was going on there. And so he took his curiosity and, figured it out and spent his whole lifetime, his working career, effectively 30 years in the classroom. And so I kind of feel actually a lot of responsibility to help, perpetuate some of that work and to really level it up. I found one of his speeches from 1995 that I converted to, it's on YouTube, converted to the digital version. It's called The Tragedy at Benson, Vermont. And it basically just goes through how these schools, they suck the money out of the communities. They suck the kids out of the parents' homes and the families, and just destroys these small communities. Anyways, in this talk, he's, in his prime, probably 58, strong man at that point still. And he says, it's time to throw down the gauntlet, it's not debatable that these schools are hurting people, these kids are getting hurt. And so it's time to throw down the gauntlet. So I think here are some of these phrases from John and his writings and talking with him. I mean, and he kind of like some of the voluntarists or anarchists, there's an anger phase, but then there's kind of a phase of resolve. And it's like, okay, here's the system, but I'm going to do something about it, right? It's no longer like I'm going to go break stuff. It's like I'm going to try to focus and try to create something that can, go and be spread around like seeds, like Johnny Appleseed. You spread these seeds out there. And then, when we pass on, there's something left to remain and to help, provide shade for future generations. So this is, I just working with him was such a great honor. And so now there's other things we want to do, but one thing at a time. And I think the GATTO Project is probably going to be the next initiative. But it was a great joy to work with John. And I give all the respect and all the wowness, the wow factor to John for the book. I got to edit it, and it was also, some work. We received some help from Pat Ferenga in previous editions when it was a big old thick one, a big old textbook type college book. Pat Ferenga helped out there, and other people that I might not know about. But I think the message is that we got to get the kids out of the school system. This is the other point, is that it's not reformable. There's too many financial carrots, too many political ties. The National Education Association is the largest political union in the country, over 3 million members. And it's not to say they're all bad. My mother is a retired public school teacher. I have family members who are working teachers and principals, loving people, good, smart people. But it's hard when you have financial dependencies and, you have to change a career. The school system did not prepare us for that. So I think just getting one child out, and your child for the viewers watching, or help families, and the great quote also from John is that a real education doesn't cost a penny. You might see the private schools charge $50,000 or $30,000, but what they learn in those school doesn't cost anything. It's just to pay for the teacher salaries and the buildings. But a real education is effectively free. And this is why John Gatto is such still, he's feared by the school system. And this is one of the other bones I got to pick with the system, is that when he passed away last October, there was no mention of it. Thankfully, Jeff Borwick mentioned it. I think Fee Online mentioned it, and maybe a couple other organizations, but there was just no mainstream organizations mentioned it. And that was another awakening for me to realize they don't mention John Gatto because he is the Achilles heel to the system. He's the kryptonite to the system, because any parent who reads his book, Dumbing Us Down, Weapons of Mass Instruction, the one you just showed, Underground History, if you read that and just focus on that, you're going to say, I got to get my kids out of here, even if it takes 2 years or 3 years, because it is such a machinery of indoctrination and statism as we're talking about freedom. So it's amazing guy. I love you, John Gatto, and Janet's still alive, and I'm actually in communication with one of his relatives. So there is still hope for his legacy, and we're going to do what we can to make sure that it gets bigger and broader. And maybe we'll talk later about it, and you can assist or somehow participate. But
Sure.
anybody out there also, he's on. I run his Twitter at Real John Gatto on Twitter, and then John Taylor Gatto on Instagram and the YouTube as well, and the Underground History of American Education on Facebook.
Awesome. Yeah, well, so here's another thing I got for you, and this is we've been doing these community summits for the 24/7 365 community, and so this next one coming up in late September is going to be on effectively what we're doing. We're asking a question, what is community, what is security, and this one is going to be, what is education and learning. And so what we want to get into is what is this, what is a community responsible for when it comes to learning and education. And I think this is one of the greatest things and opportunities that we have as far as a community, is to really get serious about how do we go about educating ourselves and each other, and contributing to each other's growth and knowledge, within a community, and encouraging that kind of thing. Because I think that's, if we can do it correctly, we can attract, a great deal of people to this, with that concern and observation of what is the things that are important. And so the question I'll ask you is what are the important things about education? I think kids, I think, have it in them right from the beginning, the curiosity and stuff like that. But let's hear what you got to say about it, because you're the man with this.
So when I do my consulting with parents, homeschool consulting, or maybe they put them in my private school for accelerated graduation or do some apprenticeship type services, that's what I start. I ask them, what do you desire for your child? And then, what is an education? And I've never heard an answer, unfortunately, where it was like, here's what education is, because it's a very vague topic. It's kind of like saying, what is beauty? Unless you're an artist, unless you're somebody who's like, oh, what is beauty? Or what is education? And so, as I've been editing, John's work and working with him and the website, and it's like everything, I'm like right up close. I'm just like this, really close with his work. So I'm like really thinking about it. And here's kind of an add-on of what he said. First of all, he distinguishes between schooling and education. And he says schooling is what somebody else does to you, and education is what you do to yourself. And so my add-on to that is that an education is what you do to yourself to create a good life. So you can be schooled by other people, but an education is what comes out of you, because the root of education is educo, and that means to draw from within, to draw out. And as we mentioned, the young kids are so bright and so intelligent and genius, in my opinion, in their own ways. So we have to help them realize that they're brilliant and genius, right? And get rid of that self-alienation, or what's called learned helplessness. They learn that they're stupid, so they believe they're stupid, right? And it's not true. So looking at each person, grown or young, as a super intelligent, brilliant person, genius level. Now, some people are, more mathematically inclined or musically, and this is what Howard Gardner talked about in his um, uh, book, seminal work, Multiple Intelligences, and he started off with 7 and 8. Now I think there's 9 intelligences. But as I've got closer into it and learning about Gatto, and his great quote is that he says an education should be as unique as your fingerprints. And so just like you're 1 in 7 billion, as am I, and any person watching this, I believe there's 7 types of intelligences, and you are that type of intelligence. And so that's how I define education. And then intelligence is another baloney thing that they throw out there. You have IQ tests, and some people are really strong or, maybe not. And I'm kind of like, well, maybe they have some impact, of pattern identification, pattern recognition. There's value in that, but it's still a form of third-party evaluation because you are responsible for your own education, as am I. And the sooner we help our young people realize that I can't give you an education, just like I can't give you giant muscles and a six-pack. If you want that, I can give you a gym membership, but you have to go do the work. You got to go to the gym and do the work. The same thing. You can pay for your child's schooling, but you cannot give them education. And so how I define intelligence is when you move closer to your goals. So if you have no goals, then you really cannot identify your intelligence. But if you have some goals and you're getting closer, then that is being intelligent. And I got that one from Brian Tracy. So these are some of the key words that schools, mainly the public school, colleges, they throw around there. And of course, you want your child to be successful. So education is the key to success. But what is an education? So we just mentioned that. And so being aware that they throw these, vague words out there, mom and dad and uncles and aunties and whoever you are, that they'll throw these out there. And if you don't have this basic understanding, rewind, listen to this interview again. And so write some of those things down. That's my suggestion. So that when somebody comes at you and says, this is what they need for an education, you say, no, it's not. Here's what I think, and intelligence and, these types of things. Come up with your own definitions, something that aligns with you and your values and your maybe traditions or beliefs or whatever it is. But just understand that the forced school system is designed to create obedient people for the military and for consumerism. And this has been documented. And you can look at John Gatto's work for that. So but when someone says, I want to give my child a good education, if I have some rapport with them and have a relationship with them, I'll say, well, can I slow you down? I'm sorry, man. You can't give them that. You can provide an environment. You can give them love. And if you give them love and acceptance, then maybe they'll have some foundation of confidence and self-esteem. But in education is what you do to yourself to create a good life. And so rather than forcing that, you kind of want to attract them, as you said. And just as it relates to freedom and getting the word out there, this is kind of the evolving evolution of this community, is that we're now realizing that it takes intention to bring in new people, and to grow the event, or people start their other new events, like Anarchadelphia is coming up, and Anarcha just passed, Anarchapulco, maybe we'll see something, San Diego, LA, Seattle. Come on, guys, where you guys do start your own events, we'll help you. At Anarchapulco, they want to do like a page called Anarchy Everywhere, so Jeff wants to help get it out there so that the ideas are out there, and then people just say, okay, we're free, we don't have to participate with the coercive third-party organization that we didn't contract with, right? And that's why I'm so grateful for Lysander Spooner, and his quote was effectively, what's the difference between a gang thief who steals people's money and the government is that the government actually tries to convince people that it's legal, and that's moral. Where a gang of thieves, they know that it's theft and robbery, and there's nothing moral about it.
Absolutely. Great stuff, man. Great stuff. Yeah, I know you're in a pinch for time, but let me ask you one last question, and that is, who out there, I'm putting together this community summit, and I want to invite some people. And of course, the 365 group is not just for people here in Acapulco. It's kind of a virtual group too. And then there's people that come and they may stay for a few months, but then they go back to wherever they live. And we kind of maintain a relationship online and stuff. But this group is Anarchapulco 365. It's every day of the year. And so, yeah, I love to see the groups pop up all over the place and events go all over. But who are the guys, who are the people that are really the cutting edge of education or learning that you can think of that are either in our community or outside our community that would be great people to talk to?
Yeah, I think I mentioned Richard Grove. I think there's a gentleman named Brett Venat over at School Sucks podcast. There's a gentleman named Connor Boyack, the author of Tuttle Twins. I think Isaac Morehouse. I don't know if he's anarchist. I think he's libertarian or freedom-minded there at Praxis. Zach Slayback, I think, is involved with that organization or some other place. Those are the people off the top of my head. I'm sure there's a few other ones. But in terms of the kind of path that I'm on, it's few, to expose the system and to not say to try to reform it. I think there's a lot of good reformers, well-intentioned people out there, and I'm not trying to discourage them from doing the activist work that they believe is helpful. I just seen so much with GATTO's work and even Charlotte Isserbit, just how there's a major agenda that is, generations in planning. And so to really understand that, so these are guys that I respect, got a lot of appreciation for their work and their courage to go out there. And, if I miss somebody, feel free to put it in the comments here or tag me. I'm also on Twitter at Principal DJR, and, let us know, because I want to connect with these people and maybe do some projects with them or do some interviews. But I think as long as these conversations continue to happen with different people on different places in their life, and we create media, which is, why I'm so glad to chat with you, to create this media will exist forever. So yeah, feel free to, tag me or make some recommendations. But I really enjoyed chatting with you, man.
All right. Well, as a matter of fact, we're the community summit is going to be I think it's the last Saturday of September. It should be, about a 3 or 4 hour online kind of event. Are you willing to join in on that, or at least maybe do an hour presentation or something in there somewhere?
Yes. Send me an email. Send me an email. I'll take a look at my schedule and see if it's available. And
Okay.
yeah, I'd love to contribute and help out in any way. But freedom is the deal, man. And you're out there, doing some good work. So I'll help however I can, and just keep banging the drum. I'll do the same thing, and I'll keep supporting people in the community. This is the other part, and then I got to get going here, was about understanding the compassionate communication. I mentioned the part we went through the anger phase, and I think Anarchapulco is going to be starting the Love and Healing Committee. It's going to be open to everybody. So I hope you and your viewers get involved with that, because once we have the reality check with the state, we're like so angry, but that anger repels people. So how to quickly get over that anger, and I'm not saying get rid of it, because there's still parts of me that are angry as well. We can transmute that anger and put it into productivity, but to be like banging or breaking stuff or whatever is not a positive transformation, I think. So to understand everybody's going through their own evolution, their own awakening. Many of us, don't get the appreciation from our families, like, oh, thanks for pointing out 9/11 was construed by the government, or thanks for pointing out, the spraying in the sky, or the vaccines cause autism, or how many topics are there where you're like, damn, dude, like, I didn't know, is that crazy? And so we gotta be that support with each other, even though we might have different religions or non-religions, or eating habits or not eating habits, or drinking or partying or whatever, whatever. We got to find some fundamental things we agree upon. And I think that is the self-ownership principle, the non-aggression principle, and the self-defense principle. So hopefully, we can continue to grow and become stronger men and women in the community and in the movement, whatever that is. But consciousness is increasing. People are looking for answers. They're tired of this left-right paradigm. They did a he's an actor, right? Donald Trump's an actor. Let's say a reality show guy, as a president, so he's a marketer, he's a businessman. And then you have other people coming out of the woodworks to become president. They're looking for something, they're like the blind leading the blind. But the reality, Michael, as you know, is that we have the truth of freedom. You own yourself. You're born free. You're not obligated to a contract that you personally didn't consent to. That's just the fundamental truth. You have unalienable right, your life, your liberty, pursuit of happiness, which includes your property. That's an extension of your life. So that's my 2 cents there. And yeah, feel free to message me again, and we'll see if we can connect at the end of September. And thanks for
Okay.
having me on
Yeah.
your show.
Yeah, man, you're a tremendous wealth of knowledge, David. And man, I know we're going to have a part 2 for this because there's so much more I'd like to know. But
Yeah.
thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, David, and thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Absolutely,
Really
Mike.
appreciate
We'll do it again. Yep. Thank you for your leadership. We'll see you later.
All right, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.